you take a look at how this one interacts with the tweezers,
Okay.
you can see that there's like...
Okay, it's cold.
Yeah.
All right.
Then this one...
But they're on different states of existence.
Yeah, but this one is like ice, and this one is liquid ice. Don't you think that because they have different behaviors with the tweezers that they should have different names, like completely different names? Like maybe this one's called ice and this one's called...
water.
That's a weird, obscure word that doesn't actually exist that you just made up off the top of your head right now for the very specific purposes of this conversation.
Yeah, completely random.
Don't drink out of it.
I'm not.
This came out of a box in your garage and it was just covered in weird stuff.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. Hey everyone, welcome to GameGorgon. My name's Jake.
No, it's not!
Yes, it is!
It's Indigo!
It's Jake.
And I'm Krug, and today we're here to talk to you about the Errata for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, the very first official Errata. This is not something that came out of a live stream. This is not something that somebody said in some Discord somewhere. And we're going to talk about, specifically today, the classes. On top of that, we're not going to go over the boring stuff. Like, sometimes we're just gonna say that some prerequisites changed and we're gonna show them to you on the screen, and since there's nothing really interesting to say about it, we're just gonna move on with our lives. Is that okay?
So we're not gonna spend 2 minutes talking about the name change between liquid ice and whatever the hell they call it.
Oh no, that's the most important note. That's hands down the most important note.
All right, well, so then let's get right into it.
Let's do it. We're going in alphabetical order, so the first...
He's lying. It's best class first.
Sorry. I'm
Yep.
sorry. Didn't mean to offend. Turgeon alchemists had an option in the first release that allowed them to pick, and by allowed them, I mean attempted to allow them, but it was contradicted by the rest of the rulebook, to pick lesser elixir of life. Level 3 formula. Can't pick it at level 1.
Yeah.
That was supposed to be minor elixir of life?
I'm pretty sure in our alchemist video, we didn't mention that it was wrong, but we mentioned how strong it was, because it was like, you go at the first level, you get elixir of life, and then you get like more elixir of life later on. And we're like, that's like, it sounds really boring. You're not getting any sort of upgrade.
But it's a really strong level 1.
Yeah, and I think we talked about that.
The funny part
could have been edited out, but yeah.
we might have, we edited out a lot of stuff.
Like this entire conversation.
The mutagenist also got a new feature, straight up brand new. This is in order to replace something that was released in the core rulebook but was out of date. It basically said the mutagenist can benefit from any mutagen even if it wasn't specifically crafted for them.
Yeah, which was really confusing.
It was like the only place that it even hinted at that being a restriction was like in that feature. And I actually think, and I'm not just trying to be funny here, that we mentioned how weird that was when we talked about the alchemist.
And if we didn't, we edited it out.
I'm being serious, but also, yeah, even though that sounds like a joke, whatever. No matter what I say, you're not going to believe me. I actually think the action's really good. It's called Mutagenic Flashback.
Okay.
It's a free action, which is one of the things that I think makes it really good.
Yeah.
You experience a brief resurgence of a mutagen. Choose one mutagen you've consumed since your last preparation. You gain the effects of that mutagen for 1 minute. Free action, once per day restriction.
Sure.
But any mutagen that you've consumed since your last prep, that's really good.
So you have an acid flashback.
You basically have an acid flashback. Cue the editing. And we're also removing the term mutagen you created from a bunch of the class features.
Okay.
Which we obviously didn't catch in the Alchemist video because it was about base Alchemist, not about Alchemist feats.
I would also like to point out, we aren't removing it from the book.
Right.
Paizo is.
Paizo's removing it from our and your books.
It's actually, if you open up to the page, it will no longer be
gone.
there.
No, you have to do all this stuff yourself somehow.
Take white out.
Yep. I actually don't recommend that.
I don't either.
I don't really know what this thought process, and maybe you can shed some light on it with the first edition Pathfinder stuff, if this is a holdover or something. When would that have been useful? When would it have been like, I just answered my own question. If I, the mutagenist, made a mutagen for you, and then I was like, oh shit, no, give me.
Yep.
And then I drank it.
I think the other idea is if you have 2 mutagenists in your party.
Well, that's a joke I made in the notes. I said, I guess that makes entirely alchemist parties more viable.
The flashback is definitely a buff, in my opinion, for it. I need to be in this really like specific state of existence right now, and I don't want to spend an action drinking a potion.
And then Turgeon got a nerf. But it was a nerf down to reasonable levels.
Yes.
And not like, why do you get this level 3 formula? I'm pretty sure most groups would have been like, this meant the level 1 version of this same thing, right? Merciful Elixir also got a change that basically defines the counteract modifier that you're going to get from using it. Before it was Non-existent.
Next, we're going to go into the Barbarian, the Deer Instinct Animal Barbarian. Their damage is going to go from a D8 to a D10, and it's changing from a charge attack to a grapple.
Yeah, I think D10 is cool because I don't know if you've seen deers fight, but they mess stuff up. I don't get the change from charge to grapple. What part of a deer, I mean, and this is strictly flavor in my head. I love anything that you want to give me that has the word grapple in it, yes. But what?
Deer attack in two ways. They interlock with their antlers,
Horns,
right? Yeah. They will get up on their hind legs and like kick.
Yeah. The only thing I could think of is if like there were two antlers interlocked, and that's kind of like its own kind of grapple.
But then it would be
that's
like
between two deer.
Exactly.
Anyways, this is semantics. It's a reasonable change.
It's a change, and it was a thematic change on the grapple versus charge.
Yeah.
We are unaware of the reasoning behind it, other than the fact that it has changed, and we have feelings. Then there's a change to Terrifying Howl. It used to say like it's a demoralizing aura, basically, like a shout.
Well, it's an AOE like attack.
Yeah. It's
a burst, if you will.
So it used to say all creatures, and now it specifically says enemies because your party's considered to be creatures.
Yeah, I don't know if you know this, but most, if not all, sentient things
are creatures.
This makes the ability objectively stronger,
yes.
But I am sad that it happened because I love the flavor of even your party is scared shitless of you.
Flavor your table the way you want to play
Yeah,
it.
I would recommend, and this is just Krug, just to be clear, it's not written this way, I would recommend that you just ignore this because it's just removing just the juiciest flavor.
If you're a player though, this changed.
Yeah, come on.
And then lastly, with the Barbarian, the brutal critical now only works with melee weapons. Mm-hmm. Previously, it just says whenever you make a critical attack. Well, guess what? It's critical specifically to melee, which makes sense because the Barbarian is not about the thoughtful from the back line of attack.
Just like I'm gonna aim very precisely and let go of my.
I hit you with big things.
I've learned that I can push it further in.
As a whole, I would say that these are buffs. All of them.
Yeah, because I think you look at brutal. I can't pronounce it. You look at the last one we discussed, and it's
brutal critical.
Thank you. It's a nerf objectively. Like it is reducing the situations in which you can. But is it though? Because are you using a ranged weapon or are you in somebody's face?
That's what I was gonna say. Is because in my opinion, while it is a nerf, it's nerfing out a very like out of the norm
fringe build.
Yeah, exactly.
It's nerfing a fringe build that most barbarian players don't even think. I think most barbarian players don't even know ranged weapons exist.
Even if you are a barbarian that is trying to build this fringe ranged build, right? You're clearly not min-maxing, which is fine.
Yeah.
Totally okay with.
100%.
Yeah, across the board, I think it's a buff, and the one nerf is
meaningless.
Yeah.
Next up, we have the Bard. I got a super easy one. The Bard basically has vocabulary changes to be more consistent with the rest of the book. They don't really impact anything.
They learned like how to read to like 7th grade instead of 6th grade.
I'm gonna take Champion as well since Bard was non-existent basically.
Didn't do anything.
Champion got a couple changes specifically to support unarmed strike playstyles.
Okay.
Which is, I think, super interesting because I can't fathom a champion taking this route. But that's just my very narrow-minded idea of what I enjoy playing as a champion.
Okay.
So champion deific weapon previously only affected simple weapons. So unarmed strikes were excluded from that list. Now they specifically say this can apply to an unarmed strike as long as the damage is 1d4.
Okay.
So if you are a monk and you get this feature, deific weapon, you don't get 1d8 as your unarmed strike damage die. For those of you that don't know, Powerful Fist increases your unarmed strike damage die from a d4 to a d6. Also, technically, I'm just throwing this out there, technically, your damage die can only be increased by 1 step ever, and that's just in the general rules of how increasing damage dies work. So I'm not sure if maybe there's some kind of like wording loophole here that I'm not understanding, like maybe instead of increase they say change or something like that. So there was a loophole, but they also fixed this errata, which we'll talk about when we get to the monk. So basically this is just saying if you want to play unarmed strike, you can go ahead and do it with champion and you'll get your d6 damage just like the monk, if that's what your deific weapon is. Second thing, also to support unarmed strike playstyle, you can now apply your divine ally to hand wraps of mighty blows. Before it was not an option, and now it is specifically called out in the text as saying you can do it with any of these weapons or hand reps.
I would have said with the first option with the deific weapon, I would have said that they're doing it just in case the champion gets disarmed and they're not completely useless.
Well, but deific weapon is specifically based on your deity's weapon. So if your deity's weapon is unarmed strike, it didn't work.
Okay. All right.
It's not even not a buff in that regard.
Edit that out.
And I think the real reason is that there is a deity with unarmed strike as their weapon.
And they're just like, cool, you can worship anyone but that dude.
Yeah, basically. Like, oh, you get mechanical benefits from everybody except for this one deity. I can't remember their name, and I should because that's who all my characters love. Not a buff, not a nerf. It's supporting a fringe playstyle.
Yeah.
Which is, like, cool. Like, if you want to build this and show me how it's better than a monk, comments right now.
Next, we're going to go over Druid. The first thing that happens with them is, guess what? +1 cantrip.
Ooh, for the whole game, +1 cantrip. You start with 4, you end with 4, but instead, now it's 5.
I'm never going to say no to more cantrips.
Objectively a buff.
Yeah. The second thing with the Druid is that there was a feat option that was a poison resistance. The thing is it had the action symbol behind it.
Yeah.
Which made people think that you had to take an action to gain poison resistance, but there was like no time or anything.
Yeah, there's no anything.
Because it was a passive.
Because it's passive.
So I would like to start my morning by spending an action to being resistant to poison for the rest of the day.
And technically, it doesn't like expire either.
Yeah.
So it's like,
do I have to concentrate to
spend
keep it
one
going?
action for the rest of the game, you have +1 poison resistance.
Yeah. All in all, buff.
Buff, yeah. I mean, again, next up we're talking about the fighter. There was some like situational changes. I think the biggest one was a nerf to Incredible Ricochet. Previously, you could just target anyone with Incredible Ricochet. Now you have to target a creature that you've already targeted this turn. This is almost inconsequential. It is like one very specific thing is slightly less good now. It's not going to affect your fighter build. Even if you're playing a ranged fighter, you're almost unaffected.
Cool. Buff.
Nope. That's not how, okay. Next up, we're talking about the... All right?
Yeah, sorry. My throat is just killing me. Do you mind getting me some water?
No, yeah, I can super do that. I'll be right back.
Thanks, dude. Cool. Now that Krug's gone, we're going to do the monk without him because he's just going to lie to you. All right, so the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to be using your wisdom modifier for your key spells. I thought that was kind of obvious, but apparently it wasn't even written in the book. I think it's probably because I'm used to playing 5th edition and 1st edition Pathfinder. And then the other change is that Stance Savant is actually a free action instead of a reaction, which makes complete sense.
Here you go.
Dude, thank you so much. Cool. So we're going to go ahead and do the range.
Monk. We left off on monk.
No, I did it while you were gone.
I pissed in your water. Next, we're talking about Ranger. I can't be angry, sorry. It basically sum 0. Like, for example, it added the you need an animal companion prerequisite to a feature that affects your animal companion. Well, shucks, don't you think?
Let's take a step back and think about the bad player.
Sure.
The bad player would be like, well, this feat doesn't say I have to have an animal companion, so I clearly, when I take this, I get one.
You're right. That sounds very stupid, but there are players that exist who I'm assuming you have experience with, judging by the fact that you just said that, and who I definitely also have experience with, that think that they can do silly little quirky manipulations of words that are objectively not what's trying to be said, but they can like find some non-justification for it. Maybe this is just to prevent that behavior.
If it sounds too good to be true, it is. The game will always favor against you. It's probably not working that way.
Yeah, you probably missed a
specific
general rule somewhere or like a stacking thing somewhere. Also, I'm just going to say this is something that I have learned from doing this show, is if you think something is too weak, you probably don't understand how it works as well. Hashtag our entire discussion about the Liberator.
let's not talk about that.
I tried to bring it up. You gotta own your mistakes.
All right, and we're going to move on to Rogue. With the Rogue, there was Minor Magic, which in Minor Magic, it didn't specify what like modifier you were using for spellcasting, and it specifies now it's Charisma.
Right.
Now, I assume that the reason that this is problematic is because the fact that most people assumed it was whatever their personal key ability was,
right,
which would have been Strength, Dexterity, or Charisma based off of the racket you chose as a Rogue.
This is actually pretty funny because on Discord we were talking about why would you take this feat over just doing an archetype into a casting class? And the answer to that question is you get to use your charisma no matter what cantrip you pick, because it says in the feature, you use your charisma.
Yeah.
So if you want to pick something from a school that doesn't have a charisma-based caster, because you can pick from any tradition, not school, my bad. If you want to pick a spell from a tradition that doesn't have a charisma-based caster, you can do that and get to use your charisma. Especially good if charisma is your key stat.
Yeah, if you're a scoundrel rogue, you're like, cool, I do magic. That's my thing.
I think this is great. I think it's definitely separating itself from multi-classing, like in a very good and mechanically impactful way.
Charisma is usually your secondary, if not your key stat, based off your racket.
Yeah, charisma is always useful for infiltration. Charisma is useful for persuasion. Charisma has a bunch of stuff in the skills section that you can use. And as a rogue with all of the skills, why not have some charisma?
But not only that, one of your key things as a rogue is fainting.
Yeah, true.
Which is based off of your charisma modifier. And even if you're going the strength-based, like, brute guy, guess what intimidation is based off of?
Yep.
Like, it just makes sense.
Next up is Sorcerer, where you're going to get a brand new class feature. This comes a base Sorcerer, level 17. It's called Resolve, and it's a little boring, but very impactful to Sorcerers.
Okay.
Your will saves are going to go to Master, and when you roll a success on a will save, you get a critical success. So it's basically a proficiency increase, not a fun change. It's not adding like...
No, it's not exciting.
It's not like new, it's not creative. It is a balanced change, but it is a very, very good buff.
Now, the last thing that we're going to be talking about is the Wizard, where with the Wizard, the only change is you no longer get a feat at first level.
Because fuck you guys.
I'm a
That's
caster.
for us. That's for martial characters. You just take your spells and go over there and don't pick a feat until level 2.
When I was building Rose for Court of Corvids and I was going through it, I was just like, what? Human with that extra feat, like, and then I get a feat at level 1. Like, I'm like,
too many.
she is just like, I'm like, at level 1, she's like, way stronger than everyone else. I was like, that's crazy.
And we already know she's level 18. So.
Yep, clearly a nerf.
Clearly a nerf.
Clearly a nerf.
Probably the most crippling nerf, but also the most obvious thing that would have been in the errata is this.
Yeah.
We even like before the developers came out and were like, hey, obviously this is not the way this is supposed to be written. When we did our wizard video, we were like, hey, this is obviously not the way this is supposed to be written. We made jokes about it. Because it's funny.
My favorite comment was like, hey, they changed the first level feat thing, and then like maybe 5 minutes later there was a comment from that same person in the same thing going, never mind, you got it. All right, do me a favor, head down the comments. I got a 2-part question, or you can just answer one or the other. One, what is the most beneficial or surprising change that you saw in the errata for the classes?
Sure.
And 2, I would like to know if there is an errata change specifically that you want us to talk about.
Yes, that was my question. If you answer one of them, I would very much appreciate some guidance as to what you want us to do next, because we don't know where to go from here.
As the comments have said, clowns. We like to be clowns.
We like to be clowns, yeah. We just like to just do nonsense. Like the jokes that we put in the middle of our videos. Which apparently, like, some of you just hate, which is like, well, that makes me feel shitty.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of really good Pathfinder 2nd edition content creators that are out there. Like, if this is not the style in which you like, one, I do want to hear their feedback. Like,
sure,
yeah. Like, that's something that we've always talked about. Like, I want to hear your feedback.
Yeah.
But understand that there are some aspects of who we are as people
that we cannot change.
Yeah, like us being jackasses. Like, that's just how life is. So, I'm sorry about that.
I mean, I'm not.
Like, some of the notes that we get of like, hey, can you make the feathering around the text a little bit
Very
smaller
helpful.
so that it's easier for us to read? Like, stuff like that is super easy. Or like, oh, I wish you would
The
have...
audio sucks for the next 40 episodes,
Yeah.
and then you'll somehow figure out how to fix it, and then you'll save it as a preset, and you'll never look back.
While you're down there, make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't subscribed already. Do not hit the bell icon, and then head over to Twitter. Head over to Twitter and talk to me there. You can talk to me on Twitter at IndigoQT.
And you can talk to me on Twitter at CrewQT. Are you going to switch your Twitter?
Nope.
Oh, that's weird. Or you can talk to both of us.
It's just going to break all of the links that are attached to my name, so it doesn't make sense. The name on it now says Jake. Yeah, so
I see.
you can now search me either by Jake or Indigo. So, but my handle is anyway. Sorry,
You can talk to all of us down here and all these social media things down here, and one of them is Patreon. If you have money that you don't want to have, and then you'd like to give that money to us because we would like to have it, you can do that there. Or, I'm not pointing at the right place. I don't know where it is anymore. Or you can go to Discord if you don't have any money and just want to talk to us. That doesn't cost any money because Discord's free. Just go make a Discord account and then join ours and then talk to us. And you could get into fun conversations like, what is this rogue feature and why is it useful before Errata? If you... Bye.